In the archives of Louisiana, one page is missing. A single name erased in ash, Josiah. They say he was born in chains, yet died as a king of corpses. His rebellion burned through the night, a sermon written in blood and silence. And when the smoke cleared, the master's daughter was gone. Some say she followed him willingly. Others whisper she never had a choice. Tonight, we reopen the grave that history sealed and stare into the eyes of the man they called Josiah, the revolutionary. Louisiana, 1836. The cane fields moved like waves, golden, endless, and silent. But beneath the soil, history swelled with something rotten. The St. Vallier plantation stretched across 300 acres of marsh and misery. Its owner, Colonel Thaddeus St. Vallier, known for both his wealth and his cruelty. At dawn, the overseer's whips sang a ritual tune, leather striking flesh, blood misting against the morning air. Among the enslaved stood a man different from the rest. Josiah, broad-shouldered, quiet, eyes that did not look down when a master spoke. He carried scars like medals, earned not from weakness, but defiance. Rumor said he had once bitten through iron to break his chains. Another said he spoke to spirits, the old ones from the coast of Benin. When storms came, he'd stand alone in the rain, whispering in a tongue older than the land itself. The white men laughed, until the day one of them went missing. In the swamp behind the quarters, they found the man's body, skin drained pale as wax, eyes wide open. No wound, no blood, just a symbol carved deep into his chest, a circle with 3 lines. The meaning? No one knew. That night, the slaves were locked in. Guards doubled, but the wind still howled through the cane. And somewhere in the dark, Josiah's voice murmured, "The circle breaks when the blood remembers." The overseer crossed himself. The dogs whimpered. Something had awakened in St. Vallier Parish, and it wore the face of a slave. Morning came without sunlight. The plantation bell rang, but its sound was hollow. The overseer's body had been buried in the swamp, unmarked. Colonel St. Vallier ordered silence. No slave was to speak his name again. Yet silence itself became the loudest sound on the land. Josiah worked as if nothing had happened, his motions deliberate, his eyes unreadable. But others began to change. Some slaves whispered prayers before dawn, not to Christ, but to something older. Small tokens appeared beneath the cabins: bones, circles, salt, black feathers. When questioned, no one claimed them. 3 nights later, another man vanished. A search party found his hat near the cane ditch. His body surfaced days later, floating face down. The same mark, the circle in 3 lines, carved between his ribs. The colonel called for a priest. Father Matthew came from New Orleans, a gaunt man with black fingernails and strange Latin chants. He sprinkled holy water across the cabins. Josiah watched him closely, lips moving in quiet opposition. By dusk, the dogs began barking toward the river. Something was there, a figure walking slowly through the fog. When they raised their rifles, the shape vanished into the reeds. The colonel demanded order. Yet behind his window, he could hear chains dragging across the yard where none were hung. Evelyn St. Vallier was 19. Pale, distant, fond of sketching in secret notebooks. Unlike her father, she spoke softly to the enslaved, especially to Josiah. Witnesses said she often lingered near the cane mill, watching him. Rumor spread. Her maid claimed Evelyn brought Josiah water one evening and never returned for an hour. Later, servants heard her sobbing behind her locked door. That week, the priest found her drawings. Circles, 3 lines, the same mark. When confronted, she said she saw it in dreams. Father Matthew warned the colonel that the plantation was infected. He spoke of pagan blood rites disguised as rebellion. The colonel dismissed him, though his eyes betrayed fear. At midnight, Evelyn walked barefoot into the fields. Witnesses saw her whispering to Josiah near the cane. He raised his hand to her cheek. She didn't flinch. The moonlight glinted off iron shackles, yet in that moment it looked like a crown. Something unnatural spread across the plantation. Crops turned black at the roots. The air grew heavy, rancid as though time itself decayed. Workers collapsed with fever. The priest called it punishment. Josiah called it proof. He began speaking to the others after dark, his voice low, certain. He spoke of freedom, but not as men understood it, as a cleansing, an undoing of the master's bloodline. On the seventh night, a storm rose without warning. Lightning struck the chapel, splitting its steeple. Evelyn was found standing in the doorway, unharmed, hair dripping with rain. She said Josiah had warned her. Father Matthew accused Josiah of witchcraft. The colonel ordered his whipping. 50 lashes. Josiah didn't scream. He looked up, blood streaming down his back, and said, "You cannot kill what the earth remembers." By morning, the priest was gone. Only his cassock remained, tangled in the roots by the river. The night of August 12, 1836, began with heat, the kind that moves before fire. Slaves reported seeing figures walking the perimeter, torches unlit, eyes reflecting red. Dogs howled until their throats bled. Near midnight, the storehouse ignited. Within moments, flames engulfed the western fields. Men ran with buckets, shouting orders, but water turned to mud in their hands. Josiah appeared on the veranda. He was no longer chained. His skin glistened with sweat and blood. Behind him, dozens followed, faces painted in ash, symbols drawn across their chests. The colonel raised his rifle. Evelyn stepped between them. "He's not your slave," she said. "He's your reckoning." The shot never came. The colonel fell to his knees, clutching his chest. Witnesses claimed they saw smoke rise from his mouth. Others swore they heard chanting, a rhythm deeper than thunder. By dawn, the plantation was gone. Only the main house remained, its white walls streaked with soot and something darker. The mark, carved deep into the wood. When the fires at St. Valier spread through the bayou, news reached New Orleans in whispers. Merchants spoke of an uprising, but no one named the man who led it. The city's newspapers printed half-truths, a disturbance among the Negroes of a lower parish. Behind those polite phrases lay fear. Officials arrived to investigate, but the survivors told conflicting stories. Some said Josiah was a ghost who rose from the river. Others insisted he walked the cane rose in daylight, unburned. A few described him teaching the field hands to write symbols in the dirt, claiming they were maps to heaven. In a locked archive beneath St. Louis Cathedral, Father Matthew's notes were found. Every page bore the same phrase. The mark is older than the cross. Beneath it, a sketch, 3 lines within a circle, drawn over and over until the paper tore. City authorities sealed the journal, labeling it superstitious material. Yet one clerk swore the ink never dried. When he touched the page, it left a perfect black print on his skin, one that would not wash away. Months later, a secret meeting took place above a sugar warehouse on the waterfront. The men gathered there were not preachers or soldiers, but merchants, planters, bankers, brokers, the hidden machinery of the South. They called themselves the Council of Traders. Their concern was not justice, but contagion. If Josiah's story spread, it could unmake the order on which their fortunes stood. They hired private agents to erase witnesses, to buy silence. Plantation ledgers were burned. Families paid to forget. Still, the rumor grew stronger. Sailors claimed to see a tall man on the levee at night, whispering to the river. A freedwoman in the quarter said he promised her people would walk unchained before the century turned. The council decided to rewrite the record itself. They created a false rebellion in another parish, attached new names to old deaths. History bent like metal under a hammer. But every forgery left a shadow, and in that shadow, Josiah's name kept returning, carved faintly into wood, into stone, into memory itself. In 1838, 2 years after the fire, a pale woman arrived at a convent in Mobile. She called herself Sister Evelyn. The nuns took her in, never knowing who she had been. At night, she wrote long letters to a man who could not receive them. They were filled with drawings of circles, lines, and eyes that wept ash. In one letter she confessed. He said freedom was not escape. It was remembrance, that the living and the dead were the same, when truth is buried. The Mother Superior sent the writings to the Archbishop, fearing possession. The papers disappeared into diocesan storage. Decades later, a janitor found them sealed in wax, the words still faintly warm to the touch. By the 1850s, Louisiana's archives held nothing of the St. Vallier estate. But in a hidden catalog, scholars discovered black pages, parchment coated in soot, stamped with the government seal. When exposed, in 1874, a historian named Samuel Griggs stumbled upon a crate of forbidden documents in a decaying courthouse attic near Baton Rouge. Inside was a leather-bound journal, cracked with age, the pages blackened at the edges. Its title, embossed faintly in gold, read, "The Book of Circles." The first pages contained sketches of geometric patterns, symbols combining Christian and African sigils, crosses merged with serpents, suns enclosed by rings. But it was the handwriting that stopped Griggs cold. Each line ended with a single signature, J. The writings described a hidden covenant, one that bound the blood of the master to that of the enslaved, until both remember their beginning. The last entry spoke of a daughter of pale fire and the return of the seed through union. Griggs, an irrational man, dismissed it as superstition, but after reading, he began having visions of fields burning beneath a red moon. Within a week, he stopped sleeping. His last letter to a colleague read simply, "The mark is not drawn. It chooses." His body was found near the river, his skin unmarked, except for one faint circle traced in ash across his chest. In the years following the war, newly freed men carried with them stories, songs, chants, fragments of memory that refused to die. Among them was a song with no melody, only rhythm, the sound of breath breaking against silence. They called it Josiah's Prayer. Anthropologists collecting field recordings in 1903 captured an elderly man singing it on a cracked phonograph cylinder. When played back, a second voice could be heard beneath the singers, low, echoing, impossible for one man to make. The researcher noted that when the record played, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The wax warped afterward, leaving behind only the circle of grooves, unplayable but perfect. For decades, that recording was believed lost, until 1932, when it surfaced in the basement of Tulane University. Archivists found it still sealed, the label faded except for one word written in black ink. Remember. Section 13, The Scholar and the Symbol. By the 1920s, the legend of Josiah resurfaced in academic circles. Dr. Harlan Devereaux, a professor of religious history, lectured on syncretic rebellions of the American South. He argued that Josiah's uprising was not political, but metaphysical, a ritual to undo the corruption of human ownership. Devereaux became obsessed. He traveled to every parish tied to the old plantation records, tracing the mark wherever it appeared, on tombstones, church bells, courthouse steps. His notebooks multiplied, filled with sketches of the circle and its 3 lines. In his final lecture, delivered in 1928, he warned his students, "History does not bury evil. It seeds it." Josiah was not destroyed. He was planted. That night, witnesses reported strange vibrations beneath the old university hall. Doors shook. Candles flared. The professor vanished before morning. Only his chalkboard remained, covered edge to edge with circles, each drawn without lifting the chalk. Years later, a journalist named Lydia Crane investigated the Devereaux disappearance. Her trail led her deep into St. Vallier Parish, now overgrown, its ruins half swallowed by the swamp. There, she found the remnants of an old chapel, its altar missing, its floor carved with faint, concentric symbols. Inside, she discovered a wall of names etched into stone. Some belonged to the enslaved of the 1830s, others to families who had lived there decades later. But one name appeared in both columns, Evelyn. When she touched the carving, the air trembled. Birds fell silent. Beneath her feet, the earth seemed to breathe. She fled, leaving her recorder behind. 2 days later, a local boy found it floating near the riverbank. The tape inside carried only static, until the final seconds, when a single voice, slow and calm, whispered. The circle breaks when the blood remembers. Section 15. The Ritual of Remembering. Documents uncovered in 1946 revealed a secret society within the church, the Order of the Broken Circle. Formed to suppress the Josiah heresy, they destroyed artifacts, burned parish ledgers, and erased names from cemeteries. But in doing so, they preserved his myth. For every name they struck out, another appeared elsewhere, as if written by unseen hands. One surviving letter from a frightened novice describes their last rite. They gathered in the old crypt. Each carried a candle. In the center, they placed a mirror. When the priest began the prayer, every flame bent toward the reflection. And in the glass, they saw not their own faces, but a man, tall, scarred, eyes like stormlight. The mirror shattered. The candles died. The novice fled and never spoke again. The order dissolved quietly soon after. But the letter ends with a note written in trembling script. He was not seeking revenge. He was seeking memory. By 1950, the old St. Valier ground had become overrun with willow and vine. Locals called it the field that wouldn't die. Every attempt to clear the land failed. Crops rotted, tools dulled overnight. Workers spoke of hearing songs under the soil, a rhythm too slow to be human. A surveyor recorded a low hum that registered on no frequency chart. When played back, the sound shaped itself into words. Remember. The county closed the site, but people still came, pilgrims, historians, wanderers, each leaving with dreams of a man standing in the mist, eyes like embers beneath rain. Section 17. The Parish of Echoes. Old parish maps show a road that no longer exists, leading into the swamp. In the 1960s, a photographer named Dalton Gray tried to find it. He returned with only one image, a church with no doors, its windows burning with pale light. When the film was developed, faint figures surrounded the building, dozens, maybe hundreds, standing perfectly still. Experts dismissed it as double exposure. Yet every figure bore the same faint outline around the chest, a circle crossed by 3 lines. Gray vanished a year later. The negatives surfaced in a private collection in 1983. Even under ultraviolet light, the faces remained blank. In 1994, the Louisiana State Museum unveiled a new exhibit on forgotten rebellions. Among the items was a cracked hand mirror from a St. Valier estate. Visitors reported seeing movement behind their reflections. Security footage captured nothing, only the moment when the glass darkened, turning from mirror to shadow. Then the recording stopped. Curators removed the artifact after staff claimed to hear a voice whisper their names as they passed. The mirror's location today is unlisted. Section 19. The Fifth Record. 21st century researchers digitizing old phonograph cylinders rediscovered Josiah's prayer. Advanced analysis revealed 5 layers of sound, not 2. Beneath them, all pulsed a deep, steady rhythm identical to human heartbeat. When engineers isolated it, the lights in the lab flickered and power failed. Before the system shut down, one final phrase appeared on the waveform monitor, as if typed from within the audio file itself. The blood has remembered. The data erased itself seconds later. Today, no one speaks of St. Valier Parish. It isn't on maps. The bayou swallowed it long ago. Yet travelers still report finding a clearing where the air feels heavy, the ground warm, and the wind carries the scent of burnt sugarcane. Some say if you stand there at night, you'll hear a slow chant rising from the dark water, half prayer, half warning. Was Josiah ever a man, or the voice of memory itself? Did he die in fire, or did the land simply decide to remember what men try to forget? The archives are silent. The church denies. The field still hums. And every circle drawn in dust, in blood, in ash, is just another doorway waiting to open.